Hey everybody, JJ here. Welcome back for another Saturday of Zoom networking. Uh, Excited to be here, excited for a beautiful day in Southern California, little hills behind me of LA. Um, Today's guest speaker is a gentleman by the name of Guy Varble, fantastic person, all-around human being, business person, family man, coach, mentor, entrepreneur, successful business person. Guy, how you doing today?
Doing great, JJ. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's good to see you. I really enjoyed our talk the other day on the phone when we spoke briefly. It was great to catch up with you and great to hear what you're doing and to bring your level of expertise and knowledge to this group. And our Zoom calls is a blessing. And I thank you so much for being with us today. Before we get going, can you just briefly, as an intro, sort of tell folks what you're going to talk about, and then I'll cut you loose.
Sure. Today, I'm going to talk about just that progress of going from a brand new investor to doing a number of fixed flips types of deals, and then getting into the commercial side of business, specifically around self-storage facilities.
Great. So with no further ado, take it away.
JJ, again, thank you so much for inviting me to just share a little bit of what I've done. Really, what I hope to do for you guys as a group today is just help encourage you to take the next step, right? Like, we all want to jump from here to, 5 blocks from here, but let's just take the next step. And when you continue to take one step after another, it's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be fun. Sometimes it'll be painful. But at the end of the day, you keep moving forward. There is no limit to what you can do. The only limit is you. It's in your mind. It's in your way. You're the one, right? So when you step out of the way and you allow yourself to grow, to become bigger and more valuable, then at that point in time, you'll be able to help more people. You'll be able to do more sizable deals. You'll be able to make more money, lose more money, right? As you do those two things, they kind of go hand in hand at times. And you get to grow as a person. So I think I'll do a real quick intro. It was probably 2010 that I bought the Fortune Builders. What I did is I tell people is I bought this duplicatable business model that was to help me, do a business. And what I got was a life transforming process, because personally, I needed to change, right? I couldn't get to where I am today because of the things that were blocking me before I was. So we're talking 12 years ago, right? I can't get to where I want to be 12 years from now unless I change who I am today. So I'll sort of explain what that progress was a little bit like. And some of you may think, I don't relate to that at all. And others may think, oh, that's absolutely true to you. Some sort of real high watermark moments for me were fear. I was afraid. I was afraid to start marketing. I was afraid to start putting out bandit signs. I was afraid for the phone to ring. I was afraid to talk to people because I was afraid that they would think I was trying to take something from them. And so I had to change that mindset. I had to say, look, I'm here to add value to somebody's life. If they could do it differently, they will do it differently. So I started to allow myself some freedom to be able to go out and help them along their path. Some people, if they were looking to sell their property for the highest dollar amount, I was probably never going to be the buyer. Once I understood that, I started to be able to give them some support. Say, hey, here's some people who can help you. Here's some real estate agents. Here's some other people. Here's some other things that can be valuable to you. So once I finally got through that fear and the phone started ringing, I had to actually answer the phone, right? Because then the phone was like this heavy thing. So I had this fear. I had to start answering the phone. I had to start putting in offers. And the hardest thing for me was to put in an offer that I thought was going to be insulting. And I realized that a number is just a number, right? It can move the decimal point over, it could up it, down it, whatever. And so what I realized is I had to start putting in offers that, for me, I had to say, answer the phone, I had to call them back, I had to put in the offer. And if I wasn't personally embarrassed by the offer, I had to drop the price. That was the hurdle I needed to overcome, because I had this sort of fairness concepts, something that said, hey, here's this concept here. Once I realized that it wasn't about fairness, because fairness is a very interesting concept. It was about, hey, can I help this person do what they need to accomplish? And is it fair to them to offer them a price that is worthwhile to me? The one thing that helps you overcome that fear is lose money on a couple of deals, right? Feel free just to go lose money, right? When you lose money on a deal, you're like, wait, that wasn't fair to me. How is that possible, right? And so you start to say, look, I need to make sure that I'm putting myself in a position to protect myself, protect my family, protect my future, protect my legacy. So all of those things, those are things I had to overcome. And I did pretty good at that. We didn't do a ton of business. We probably flipped 120 homes or something like that. I think the most homes I flipped in 1 year was 38 or something like that. And so, it was just something that was the process, right? So I implemented the systems. I started to coach. I coached for Fortune Builders for a number of years. And that was very good for me, because as I coached, I continued to hone my processes. So as I'm coaching students to this, I also honed my process doing the same things in my business. So if you ever want to learn how to be great at something, coach it, right? You got to learn it. You got to teach it, and you got to be good at it. So you go implement it in your business. So I did those things, and I had to grow that way. And so along the way, we started to buy some single family homes and some smaller multifamily, 7 units, 4 units, 2 units, that kind of stuff. And I had a little bit of experience in rental real estate, and that was okay. But then, you figure out that people typically aren't always truthful, right? Sellers lie to you, contractors lie to you, renters lie to you, bankers lie to you. I mean, it just happens, right? People aren't doing that. And so you figure out how to put yourself out there, lead with contribution, be a person who does what you say you're going to do, and then really circle yourself, connect yourself with the right people. So for me, it was getting the education, getting the coaching, going out and doing the actions, facing my fears, facing my frustration, and just continuing forward. You're not going to find a whole lot of really, really successful real estate people who stopped on their 12th deal. They just didn't stop, right? Like they continue to keep going and going and going. From there, we decided to get into self-storage, and we started to look at that. We have a pretty strong confidence in our ability to figure stuff out, right? I mean, if you buy something, you can probably figure out how to get the windows replaced, right? You don't sit around going, oh no, like I don't know how to do that, right? Even if you don't know how to replace windows, you're probably pretty confident you can go find somebody who does. So when we got into self-storage, we have that mentality. We're like, hey, we can probably figure this out. We joined associations. They're very open, very helpful, very transparent, very sharing. That was really interesting. Really grew in that model. We probably did, we've probably done about $90 to $100 million in deals in the last 3 years. And that's wholesaling them as well as buying them and selling them or building them or converting, that kind of stuff. So I would say that when we moved from residential to commercial, you just move the decimal point over, right? Everything is more expensive. Everything takes longer. Everything is more risky, right? You have larger opportunity to to make mistakes. The sharks that swim in these waters, they're bigger, they're more knowledgeable. And it's a very buyer beware industry. Commercial is very buyer beware. Residential, especially single family, seller disclosures is very seller beware. You've got to disclose everything as a seller. When you get into commercial, you have to have due diligence, right? You have to hire the right people. You need to do the right stuff. And it's a very extensive team, right? You need to have the right attorneys. You have to do the EPA inspections. You have to do professional level inspectors to go through and look for things that are very foundational and structural and problems, that kind of stuff. All that to say, you can hire the right people, right? This is the thing. We hired the right people when we rehabbed houses. I didn't get up on a roof and flip. I didn't replace roofs, right? I didn't go hang cabinets or put in, any of that kind of stuff. And I don't do that with commercial either. I don't go, replace roofs, put on solar. I don't go put in, sliding gates or cameras or any of that kind of stuff. I don't do any of that. It's just, again, same kind of concept. What you're doing in residential, you're finding and identifying the right people to work with, finding and identifying the right equity people who are going to lend you money, private money lenders or bank people or a combination. And then you're finding and identifying the right people who can get everything done, and then the right people to sell if you're going to sell. And it's the same thing. It just sort of moved over a little bit. I've got a number of friends who are multifamily, and it's just another step, right? Multifamily could be $300 million, very, very lucrative, bigger deals. Same kind of concept though, right? It's understanding what it is. The thing that we understand with residential is we know we can take a house that's got a 1970s bathroom and a 1970s kitchen and put in a 2020s bathroom and 2020s kitchen, and that adds value. Like, we know how to do that, right? We know how to look at a house, maybe add a bedroom, right? I mean, I've never done it, but add another level. There's, you can add space to it, but all of the value add comes from the work we do on the property. Well, of course, if we've got great marketing and we've got great, especially if you're doing sub twos, like you guys were talking about, there's other opportunity that fits in that realm as well. But in general, the value that happens with a single family home comes from ripping out the carpet, putting in carpet, painting it, staging it, and then being able to sell it quickly, right? That's just a very simple rehab model. When it comes to commercial, it's all about what we call net operating income. Right? Net operating income is what drives the value of commercial properties. And that is a pretty simple formula. It's pretty straightforward. The question is how do you add that net operating income? So it's from the profit and loss statement, right? And it's driven off of increasing income, decreasing expenses, and cleaning things up. Right? And some of the ways that you increase income is you bring in more tenants. Same thing with multifamily. You increase income by bringing in more tenants. And one of the ways you increase income is you increase the rates that you charge. Right? So it's pretty simple, logical stuff. I mean, all of us have done it. All of us have rented. Many of us have rented a self-storage unit. I mean, it's a pretty simple model to handle. Another way that you decrease expenses is you either decrease operating expenses by cutting back on maybe some overpriced utilities. You might do some capital expenditures to bring in a higher efficiency furnace or AC or things like that will drive more efficiencies in that unit. So then it gets into like, well, why would people pay more and all of that kind of stuff and all of those things. The reality is, I want you to just hear, I couldn't make a phone call because the phone was too heavy, right? I couldn't put out marketing because I didn't want people to call because I couldn't handle that. I wouldn't want to put in offers because I was afraid of what they were going to think of me, right? We bought some rental properties. I wouldn't want to evict tenants because they might think I was a bad person, right? I had to change. There's no way I could do what I do today if I was still living in fear. So I want to just share this sort of progress so that you know that somewhere along this progression line, that's where you're at. I joined another mastermind group. We meet 4 times a year, and these guys are brutal. Right? I mean, the men and women who are there, they do massive deals, like huge volume. I want to say the largest wholesaler did something like 12,000 wholesale deals a couple of years ago, right, in 1 year, right? So they do massive businesses. Some of them have hundreds of employees. They've got multiple states and all that kind of stuff. They're all business owners. So it's kind of like a one-man shop, and then I had a partner, and then we hired somebody else, and little by little we had to grow. Then we start hanging around with people who were doing just significantly larger systems and processes, and they have policies and communication structures, and they have IT departments and all of those things, because their marketing is massive. They have massive marketing. They're all doing, 200, 300, 400 flips a year. They have 1,500 rental properties, whatever it is. They've got machines. And that's an interesting process, right? You've got to continue to grow to whatever level you want. Don't just grow a business because you think you need to grow a business. Determine what lifestyle you want. Make enough money to live the way you want to live. Don't try to keep up with the other players, because there's always going to be somebody out there doing more. It's just the way it's going to be. Having said that, stretch yourself, get out, learn how to do things. Some of the owners in this group have worked through the transition process of they've now exited the operations, and they're just the owners. They've got presidents and COOs and all that kind of stuff handling their company and all that kind of stuff, and they sort of exited that process. So, there's a progression, right? This is a progression in life. I think that the one thing I wanted to share with you guys, what I learned as a coach, is when I would get on the phone with a student, one of two things would typically come up. Either a student was afraid or a student was frustrated. And I want to say 100% of the time, these were the two drivers. Typically, people are frustrated because they have too much information. They have too much knowledge. They've been doing too many studies and not enough action. So if you find yourself, if you're like, oh my gosh, I feel frustrated, just take this in mind. Say, okay, what am I not doing that I know I should be doing? Because you already know what you should be doing if you're frustrated. I'm frustrated. Okay, if you say I'm frustrated, always ask yourself, what am I not doing that I should be doing? And then go do that thing. And then get a result. Sometimes the result's great. Sometimes the result's horrible. But you get a result. Now you get a result. You can work with the result. Like, hey, don't send out 40,000, letters in one day. That's a bad thing to do if I've just got a cell phone, right? Don't do that, So the frustration is lack of action. Fear is generally driven by something that's like you don't feel like you have enough information. I'm afraid to go do something because I don't have enough information. That type of fear, I want to say, all right, well, listen to that a little bit, right? Don't get this paralysis of analysis type of thing going on. But sometimes, there may be a gut feel that says, hey, I feel like I'm missing something here, and I need some support. I need some help. And you guys are a part of some pretty good groups that I was listening to you talk about. Just put out that question to that group. I'm afraid of doing X because I'm afraid Y might happen. All of us have experienced it. We've all failed. We all know what it's like to fail. I mean, trust me, as investors, you're in a group of people, you don't need to explain that. Well, we get it. The reason I love hanging out with investors is because I don't have to explain the fear, right? I can be happy about the successes that I've had, and I can share that, and other people will be happy for me. It's hard to share that with your friends who don't understand what you do. You say you're afraid, like, you should be afraid. And then you go tell them you made $65,000 on a house. They're like, oh my gosh, that's what I make in a year, and then they resent you for it. It's like this, you can't win with some people who are outside the investment world. So always hang around people who are doing stuff. Always ask the questions. And when you get the answer, implement. If you don't implement, you will never, ever grow. Failure is a great, great, great teacher. Let's not make $50,000 failures, though. Let's make $500 failures. Let's make $200 failures. All right, let's do those little changes at a time. So the one thing that I always get is, hey, how do you finance your deals? Right? This is one of those things that's always out there. I just tell you that money's out there, right? On the residential side, I don't know the areas that you're in, but let's say you could buy a house for $300,000. You're gonna put 50 grand into it, and you could sell it for 500,000. Let's just say that's the numbers. That's a great deal, right? You have it locked up in a contract. You don't know what to do, right? You're like, I don't have the money. I mean, this is a wonderful thing to do. Call up your escrow agent, your title agent. Call up your attorney, right? Call up your appraisers. Call up the professionals that you know, right? And make the statement. Say, hey, I have a problem, right? They will put their pen down. They will say, you have a problem? Okay, what's the problem? They'll ask you that. What's the problem? Say, look, found this house, could buy for 300, could put 50 into it, and I could sell it for $500,000. Like, dang, that's a great deal. What's the problem? I don't have the 350 to do the deal. Do you know anybody who lends on deals like this? Of course, your CPA knows people who do that kind of stuff. Of course, your attorney knows people who do that kind of stuff. Of course, your title person knows people who do that stuff. That's who they work with all the time. Sometimes that person is them. They're like, yeah, me, I do that. I lend money on those kind of deals, right? When you have that deal, when you've got that kind of deal, that sort of structure, that is clearly a great deal, it's obvious. There's no kind of negotiating that kind of concept. You just say that kind of stuff. Say, hey, I've got a problem. This is my problem. And they might say, no, I don't know anybody. Say, perfect, great. Do you know anybody who might know anybody? No, I don't. Great. Hang up. Pick up the call again. Pick up the call again. Pick up the call again. And don't stop making the phone call. Because at a minimum, what you're going to do is you may lose the deal. Fine. You lose the deal. You wholesale it out. Whatever. Doesn't really matter. But at a minimum, what you've done is you've now established a group of people who you can call when you've got deals, who have heard you before say, I found a great deal. I'm working on this thing and I'm trying to get it done. This network that is slightly above where you're at right now from maybe a financial lending perspective, from that kind of perspective, they're critical to the longer term growth in your entire business. They're the people who are going to help vouch for you. They're the people who are going to help introduce you to the larger commercial lenders, the larger sort of line of credit people who are going to give you $1 million, $2 million, $4 million lines of credit. This is the process. All of these people are there. Maybe some of you already have this relationship, so this might be a little rudimentary for you, but I can tell you, as I've talked to a lot of people over the years, this is the one thing that seems to come up a lot of the time. How do I find money? I just started going to RIA meetings, talking to people, and went to my family, friends, talk to them about that as well, let them know what we were doing. Started to develop banking relationships. It was hard, right? I didn't have any experience, right? I didn't have any experience. I didn't have a lot of experience. The bank's like, hey, why should I lend you money? You should have experience. I didn't have it. one thing I did have is I used to be a commercial lender. So I understood how banks thought. And so I started to think about how I could engage with them. And I went to buy this small rental property. It was maybe $75,000 or something like that. 3 units. I'm in Des Moines, Iowa. So we get to buy stuff stupid cheap. And I was talking to the banker, and the banker said, I'm just, we're not going to do the loan. Right. And I'm like, okay, so let me just make sure. I mean, is the reason, so I asked the banker, is the reason you're not going to do the loan because you're afraid that if I default on the loan because I don't have any experience, if I'm afraid I'm going to default on the loan, that it's going to take you 6 months to go ahead and get me foreclosed on, and then you're going to have to, take care of the deal. And he said, yeah, that's really the deal. So I got to the problem. His problem was he didn't want 6 months, right? And my payments were going to be $500 a month, right? So I said, I tell you what, let's just do this. How about I buy a CD from your bank for $3,000? That's 6 months of payments. And then I'll give you this $3,000 CD as collateral against that property. If I fail it, you keep the CD. And he goes, you know what? Yeah, we could do that. So I had to problem solve the banker's problem. Now, fortunately, I understood the banker's problem. So that was something that I had in my pocket, in my toolkit, and I got the property. It was not a great property, and it did okay over the years. And I sold it for, I don't know, 135, 140, something like that, 3-4 years later. Right? I didn't make a ton of money on it, but it did do a couple of things for me. It established me as experienced. It gave me something to put on my balance sheet, and you need to have assets that sit on your balance sheet. And it gave me the starting of this relationship of working with the bankers. And so we did that on another deal. I want to say it was something small. And then as the properties grew in value, what I did is I told the bank, I said, look, I want to buy this other property, but I don't have any money to put down on it. And since you already have this other property, why don't you give me credit for the equity in that property? Right. And they said, wow, yeah, it's appreciated enough. I'll give you credit for that equity. And they gave me 100% financing on this other small property. Right. So I told you, I had to come up with a $3,000 CD. I had to solve the banker's problem. And then they were willing to do that. And then I was able to do another one, and they were able to do that, and like that kind of stuff. So that's how I sort of grew the portfolio, the residential portfolio. The flipping. This is a very interesting process that I did, and I'm going to share this with you guys because we do this on a commercial level in the millions of dollars. But I'm going to share it with you on a residential level so that you can understand how to do this for yourselves. What we do is we find somebody who's got a good level of income, maybe $180,000, $250,000 or more, right? If you get into doctors and dentists and lawyers, they might have a higher W-2 type of income. But that $180,000 to $250,000 range. An IT person, right? They're making a good deal. A senior level manager somewhere. They're busy. They've got a job and all that kind of stuff. They've been doing it 15 years, 20 years, and they're in their rut. But they are looking for a new adventure. They want to get into real estate, but they don't know how. Right? They don't have time for sure. So here you are. You've been, doing a flip here or there. You've been sort of growing your model a little bit, and so I find somebody like that, and I says, I tell you what, let's just do a joint venture deal. What we're going to do is we're going to buy a property, and we're going to buy the property in your name, and the bank's going to lend you 80% of the purchase price and 90% of the rehab. And banks will typically do that. Do a 5-year interest rate, 20-year amortization, or interest only if it's going to be a flip. They'll do that as well. It's a pretty straightforward opportunity. So in that one deal I mentioned, right, it's $300,000 purchase, $50,000 rehab. The bank's going to lend them 80% of the 300, so they're going to need 60 grand in cash for the down on that, and then they'll lend them 90% of the $50,000 rehab. So they need $5,000 there. So they need $65,000 to come up with the table. So we're going to buy the property in their name. They need to come up with $65,000 of their own cash, which they already have. Typically have $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. Maybe they've got a home equity line of credit. It doesn't really matter. They've got it, right? They put up to $65,000. Boom, we've got the money to rehab it. We got the money to buy it. Plus, you say, look, I need another 10 grand, 5,000 for payments to the bank, and I need to go buy a new pair of shoes, or I want to go to Disneyland or something like that, right? You could take a little bit of profit up front. So you go, you rehab the house, you sell it for $500,000. After all closing costs and that kind of stuff, you might maybe make 80 grand, something like that, right? So you split it with them, 50-50, 70-30. I mean, whatever number works for you, works for them. You can figure that out. You support yourself with a joint venture agreement, get that signed if you need to. You can go ahead and record the joint venture agreement if you want to, protect yourself, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, you got to do a deal, right? With their money and their credit. And you get paid a little bit in advance. And then once it gets done, then you make money. So yeah, you could have made more money if you had all the money and all the resources, but maybe you don't have that. So you got to do that. So you do that again and again and again and again and again. I mean, because at that point in time, if you have 5 people, you have an unlimited number of deals you could do. You have the ability to do more deals than your systems and processes can handle. And you'll break yourself. Like when we did 38 deals, we broke our processes. Trust me. I mean, it was, it was tough. I mean, it was really, really tough. We were running hard. I would say though, that year, I didn't see half of those deals, right? My team saw them all. I never saw them to buy them, never saw them to sell them, never saw them to rehab them, nothing. The team did it. And so if I don't have a team, if I don't have a system, if I don't have a process, then it's me. And when it's me, you're only doing a deal at a time, maybe 2. When we start to develop a team around you and they can support you and you give them a clear instructions and directions on what they're supposed to do, and you hold them accountable to that, right? That's your job. And if you're not comfortable doing that, you get to grow, right? You get to grow, or you get to hire somebody who's really good at that. So you got to do a deal. You got to do another deal. You got to do another deal. And you can clip right along. Today, we don't flip very much anymore. But I've inverted that model. Today, I am the one who has the money. I'm the one who buys, the rehabber finds the property, they bring it to me. I buy the property in my name. I come up with the down payments. I come up with the payments along the way. And then we split the profit on the other side. So I started over here and working with investors. And now I'm over here working with rehabbers. And I do that here in the Des Moines area. Because of the way that we've grown our banking relationships over the years, most of the time when I do that type of deal, I don't have any money in it myself. Our bank will give us 100% financing. Again, because of the way that we've structured ourselves. So all that to say, I was fear, couldn't pick up the phone, couldn't market, finally got that, overcame some hurdles, did some things, started engaging with other people, started to build a process, started to go ahead and flip some houses, did a lot of houses, broke the systems, broke the team, right? Made a lot of mistakes, made a lot of successes, and now have gone to the other side. This is all on the residential side. As we get into the commercial side and we start to look at this, it's the same type of thing. We just upped the game, right? So we go to the bank and say, hey, I've got an investor. He's got farmland. Farmland's worth $1 million. No debt on it. Had it for 40 years. Will you use that as collateral against a self-storage facility? Like, how much is the self-storage facility? It's $1 million. They said, well, sure, I'm going to give you $1 million to buy a self-storage facility for $1 million. And you're going to give me the self-storage facility, which is worth $1 million, plus $1 million worth of farmland. So I've got $2 million worth of collateral on $1 million worth of debt. Sure, I'll do that deal. It wasn't my farmland, right? It was my investor's farmland. And we've helped that investor grow his portfolio, grow his cash flow, grow his net worth over the years by helping him do some 1031 exchanges and cross collateralizing and growing that. And now he's got 3 or 4 self-storage facilities and a number of rentals, and we've helped him transition out of his farmlands and into real estate. Again, I'm there helping him accomplish what his goals are, and I, in turn, also gain from that process. What I really hope you can hear is, wherever you're at, there's another step. Right? It's just another step. Just take it. Take that next step. And then there'll be another one after that. I went to a 25-year college reunion of mine, and I met a friend of mine there. He said he got into real estate right out of college, and he had some family and friends who did that. And anyway, I looked him up. He's not doing little real estate. He's got a $2 billion REIT, right? Like, there's people out there who are just way ahead of anywhere that I'll ever be, right? There's just a progression. So somewhere along the line, I'll find my spot that says, hey, I'm comfortable with the cash flow. I'm comfortable with the equity, comfortable with the net worth. I'm comfortable with whatever it is. My life has changed. My lifestyle needs to change, whatever it is. Like, that's for me to decide, not for anybody else. Same thing for you. So never think that you need to get way out there. It's just, how do I take the next step? And then the next step after that. Sometimes there's a feeling of urgency because you feel the time is running out, right? Maybe I'm not going to be able to have the mobility. Maybe I'm going to run out of time. Maybe how am I going to take care of my kids or grandkids' college or those types of things? Like, there's this sense of urgency, right? Own it. Grab hold of that urgency and let it drive you, right? Don't let the fear drive you, but own it. Say, okay, every day that I sit on the couch watching TV, why am I choosing that over this other sense of urgency, right? Own it, right? Don't shame yourself. You're not guilty of anything. Don't shame yourself. Just be real with yourself, right? Let that something drive you. That sense of urgency needs to come from somewhere. And I'll tell you, just from coaching a ton of people, from living it myself, that typically that sense of urgency is going to come from outside of you. It's either somebody pushing on you, a bill collector, debt, whatever, that kind of stuff. This pressure is kind of pushing down, or it's somebody else that you love. It's something else that you're passionate about. It's something else that you can give to, that you can be alive for. Like, those are the things that are going to drive you. Motivation, pain, great motivator, very, very successful. Pain is a great motivator. It will get you to move immediately. Try it. Put your hand in the fire and see how long you can keep it there. No, don't do that, right? Pain will get you to move away immediately, right? Pain is a very, very quick motivator. Pleasure is a very slow motivator. And a lot of times it's not very successful at all, because a lot of times pleasure is more, it's a fantasy. It's something that we, have in our head. It's not something that we actually, involve ourselves with. I'm going to tell you just a little bit now about sort of how we fund our ground up builds. So if I'm going to do a ground up facility, $12 million, right? It's a $12 million build. I got to buy the land. I got to, hire the architects to do all the work and the engineers to do all the work and people to go to city council and get the land entitled and make sure that it passes zoning and all of that kind of stuff, right? So it's like, normally in residential, there's a house already there. I'm going to buy it. It's already there. I don't need to deal with it. But if I'm going to do a ground up build, $12 million, typically the bank's going to want me to have 2.4 to $3 million. Right? Well, I don't have that much cash sitting around. A lot of my money's in my other deals. So what I did is I worked with some attorneys, the SEC regulated attorneys, and learned how to do what are called Regulation D, 506B, and 506C syndication deals. It's just another learning process. You work with the right people. They tell you what not to do and what not to say, what to say and what not to say, right? And so if I'm working with a 506C, Reg D deal, then that means I could advertise to anybody I don't know. Come invest with me. I'm going to double your money in 5 years. That's the plan. No guarantee. I've got a 68-page document that tells you why you shouldn't invest here, because here's all the things that could possibly go wrong. That's the legal side, right? That's the attorney. It says, hey, here's why this deal could fail, right? Economics, war, like whatever. It goes through everything. It explains why deals fail. So in that sort of 506C environment, we're able to double people's money in about 5 years, right? That's what we plan on trying to do. Then we sort of back into that number to determine how much to give to the limited partnership stack. So the limited partners give us $3 million. We might give them half the deal. We might give them 60% of the deal, 40% of the deal, 80% of the deal, 20% of the deal, right? That kind of stuff. If I had to give them 80% of the deal, probably wouldn't do it, because it's too tight. And when you figure out how to lose money in residential, you learn a little caution, and you don't want to get into tight deals. So when you get into commercial, you don't want to get in tight deals because you're dealing with multiple millions of dollars. And if you go $1 million over budget, how are you going to handle that? Right? You go $10,000 over budget on a house, okay, that you can get that, right? You can figure that part out. But $1 million, that's a tough nut to swallow, right? So the idea is you want to make sure that you structure it in a way that works for you. And so we're very cautious, right? We're very investor friendly, well, not friendly, but investor focused, right? If we have to put our investors first, we have to protect them. We have to make sure that they're covered, because if we don't, then one of three things will happen. And these are my 3 rules to live by. 1, stay out of the newspapers. I don't want my name in the newspaper. Not for good, not for bad. Just, I don't want to be in the newspaper. Number 2, stay out of court. Like, I don't want to be in court. And number 3, stay out of jail. Don't do stuff that's going to take you to jail. Right? This is a pretty simple life process, right? And so when you don't put your investors first, trust me, you're going to get in the newspapers, you're going to go to court, and maybe you're going to go to jail, right? So let's just not do those things. And if the deal is too tight that I've got to give away 80% to make it work, I don't want to do that. It doesn't work for me. And when it doesn't work for me, it absolutely will not work for them. And I have to make sure it works for them. So with the 506 Reg C, 506C Reg D syndicated deal, you can only work with accredited investors, people who already have a net worth of over $1 million or make $200,000 or $300,000 a year, right? Married filing jointly. There's a number of other qualifications, but in general, that's the thing. And so a lot of these people, and in the 506C, you don't even know them. Right? But why would they invest with you if you don't have a track record and you don't know what, you don't have any of that kind of stuff? Then you're this risk out there that they don't really know. So there's a whole process for finding people and developing your system and developing your process. There's something called the 506B. 506B says you can invest with anybody that you already know, but you can't invest with anybody that you don't know. So it has to be with people that you already know. They've got a very specific things. It's called family, friends, and associates. Somebody that you've met more than 3 times and that you've known for more than 30 days. This is a very specific regulation. So if you meet that criteria, they can invest with you. They don't have to be accredited. You can have up to 35 people who are not accredited. So you can have people investing in your deal at $20,000, $30,000, whatever your minimum number is. I can tell you that when we did a $25,000 minimum, we would have people who could afford a $500,000 investment, but they would only do the minimum because it was the first time. So when we bumped our minimum up to $50,000, then everybody started at least doing the minimum. And we haven't said, all right, the minimum's $100,000 because we don't have any deals more than 3 million in raise right now. I would imagine that as we get to the 10 and $20 million raises, then our number will bump up to that $300,000, $500,000 minimum. Because what you don't want is 100 investors on a deal. Because then you got 100 people who feel like they can call you at any time that they want, for any reason that they want, and you should take their call. You don't want that, right? You don't want that. There is something I wanted to say early on that I learned early on when I was borrowing money from people to flip houses, is that not all money is good money. There is bad money out there. And I've had to fire investors because they're not the right investor. And a majority of the people I know who do rehabbing on a regular basis, they've got an Excel spreadsheet and they got a list of investors on, on column A, and then, across the top here, they've got points, percent, maybe minimum dollar amount, that kind of stuff. And then they have a pain in the butt factor, right, column. And that's usually 1 to 5, 5 being like, okay, you're going to take this money, but it comes with all kind of complications. And the one is like, hey, this is the easiest investor in the world, right? As long as you comply with whatever you agree to, they won't even talk to you, right? That's the best type of investor. So when you realize that not all money is good money, then you really start to vet your investors. You make them qualify. And so when I'm doing a 506B, right, somebody wants to invest, to say $50,000 in a deal, and I'm trying to get a feel for who they are. I mean, they told me who their accountant is and CPA is, and how much they think their net worth is and all that kind of stuff. And the one thing I'll ask them is this. I say, hey, do you like cars, boats, motorcycles, or something like that? And they're like, oh, I like boats. I say, great. If you had a boat that's worth, that costs an $80,000 boat, if it came on the market for $30,000, like, you need to buy it today. And you would buy it because it's an awesome deal. Do you still have that $30,000, or do you need me to give you back the 50 grand? And when they say, man, I would need that 50 grand back, I'd say, all right, well, this deal is not right for you because you're too tight. Because this is a 3 to 5 year deal. And trust me, your investors are going to have that opportunity show up. They're going to have that to show up somewhere in that investment cycle. And they're going to come to you and say, hey, man, can I get my $50,000 back? I've got this great opportunity, or whatever. Or, more tragically is, my wife's in the hospital and she needs a new kidney, or I need whatever, right? Like there's a dire need. And you've allowed yourself to put them in the position where their money is tied up in your deal. That was you who allowed that to happen because you didn't do the right vetting, because you didn't structure the deal right. Right? You're responsible, right? And when people invest with you, it's not money that they're investing. They're investing their future. It's their retirement. It's their kids' and grandkids' college funds. It's their life. People aren't investing money with you. Sure, yeah, it is money, but it's their future that you're messing around with. You don't mess around with their future. Don't take risks with people's future, right? You got to know it's a big deal. You have a massive responsibility. Granted, you buy a house, you did everything you needed to do, and there's lead poisoning in the entire city and the city dies. Yeah, okay. There's nothing you could do about that, right? But, right, you did everything you could do. You did everything you were needed to do. When you get into commercial deals, you'll find that there's people out there that all they want to do is turn and burn, turn and burn, turn and burn, turn and burn. It's a very buyer beware environment. So I want to just encourage you, as you take these steps, as you decide to maybe grow into self-storage or grow in that, partner with somebody who's already doing, or, get good counsel, like, pay an attorney for, $500 for a couple hours just to counsel you, right? To give you solid counsel, not law degree, legalese, but real counsel, right? Hire CPAs, give you good counsel, bring wise counselors around you, people who have more experience, people who have maybe alternate experience. When I first started flipping, I met with a guy, and he said, I've been doing this 40 years. He was an attorney here locally, great guy. And he says, I can tell you why the last three guys who tried to do that went bankrupt. I'm like, that was $200 well spent, right? I got counsel from wise people around me, right? You don't have to recreate the wheel. I tell everybody I've been doing real estate for 12 years, 12 years, and I've come up with some total of 0 new ideas. It's a little deflating, right? I think I'm a pretty smart guy, but I haven't come up with anything new. There's nothing new out there, right? I mean, you might structure it a little different, whatever, but I mean, I'm just following the steps that people went before me. I don't need to get creative. I don't need to do that. I can just pick up and say, okay, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's what I need to do. Right, here's where we're at. Here's where we're growing. Yeah, so I would say the last thing is you have a group of people you hang out with at least once, maybe twice a year. At least go to a group that you know you don't belong at. I mean, they're just there. They're, you know, they're like, if you're trying to get your first deal, they're doing 20 deals a year, right? Like there's a massive disparity between where you're at and where they're at, right? At least just go and be a fly on the wall and listen to how they think. Listen to what they say. Listen to who they work with, all right? The CPA that I have now is maybe, we might be outgrowing them a little bit. I don't know. But the CPA we have now, I got from another investor, right, in my area. And I'll tell you, this investor has been investing for a long time in my area. And I was asking him a bunch of tax strategies and, you know, like, how do you set up your LLCs and how do you set up your, you know, how do you maximize your, you know, all of this kind of stuff. And he said, Guy, I want to tell you something. He said, if you're not making $400,000 a year, you don't have a tax problem. You have an income problem. And that took me back. And I'm like, wow, you know, I'm talking to somebody who just like cut right through it. It's like, are you focusing on the right thing? Do you focus on revenue generation? Is that the deal? Right? I mean, he didn't say it that way. That was a very succinct statement. And, you know, that changed the way that I approached things. I had to really start focusing on revenue generation. I really focus on, you know, profitability per deal. I had to start focusing on that kind of stuff. And then as we did that, we started asking our CPAs these questions like, oh, well, let me tell you how we can help you. And they started saving us, you know, a ton of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars in not paying taxes simply because of how to structure deals. But that didn't happen, right, when I was making $90,000. It's happened when I was making more than that, right? When we started making more money, they started to help save us more money. And that was very wise counsel. It was very wise direction for me. He knew me well enough to be able to sort of jerk my chain a little bit. And so that was good. That was very valuable to me. I could go on. I will tell you that today I work with people who tell me, Guy, if I can't write you a $25 million check, it's too small. It's not worth my time, right? It's not worth their time because they've got $800 million. They can't do it $1 million at a time. They can't do it, right? I'm the one that's in the way of not being able to have deals structured in a way that would be useful to them. It's me who's failing to be able to be of service to that person. I'm the one who didn't put together a deal or a structure that allows it to be large enough to be of value to that person. I'm the one in the way, right? So how do I change? How do I grow? How do I put together a system of maybe 3 or 4 or 5 deals that are structured correctly, that's going to be worth maybe 100 million so that they can put down the 25 million, right? How do I do that? And I don't do it because I want more money, which is good. We always want more money, right? But I do it because, like, how do I serve that person? Like, and I don't yet know. I'm still growing into that. I already know how to put some of that stuff together, but there's a little bit of fear. There's a little bit of, right, uncertainty. There's a little bit of frustration. So what do I do with fear and frustration? Fear, I get counsel. Frustration, I act, right? And I do those things. It's the same thing that happened when I couldn't pick up the phone. It's the same thing that happened when I wouldn't put out the marketing, right? It's the same thing that happened when I couldn't help somebody earlier on. And so from 2015 to today, I've grown my ability. In 2015, I could have maybe helped somebody move $6 million. That was it. I was tapped. There's no way. That was just crazy big for me. Today, we could do 200 million pretty easily, right? But that's because I had to change. I had to get out of my way. I had to get, that. And I'll say this, if you're going to do anything of size, right, volume, like a lot of volume, a lot of deals or larger deals, you're not going to do it alone. It's not going to be you. You're always going to need a team. That team is what's going to help get things done. So if you think you can do it all on your own, you will, up to a point. You will hit a ceiling. You could work 24 hours a day. You could be that type of person, just really hammer it through. You're going to hit a ceiling. So somewhere along the line, understand that you're going to have to give up some of the control to people who are better than you. And I work with a lot of people who are extremely good at what they do. They're much better than me. I'm interested in what they do, but I'm not going to go back to college to learn how to what they do. I'm not going to go spend 30 years learning how to do what they do. It's never going to happen. So I need to align myself with the right people, put my investors first, make sure that I'm operating accurately and fairly with the people I'm working with, and be willing to get out of the way so that I can put together opportunities and deals for other people and help them move forward and make money. So, JJ, that's it. I think that's what I got for everybody today.
Wow, fantastic. Definite gold nuggets. I definitely love what you were talking about, syndication and stepping up our game and looking to put ourselves in a position to deal with projects that are even bigger than we're thinking about, that we've been thinking about. I know as a new investor, I'm probably thinking, well, I am thinking a lot smaller than the scale I should be opening up my mind to. And I think all of us are in that same position. So I think you just have some great stuff for everybody. So if you guys are watching this presentation on YouTube right now, please like the video below. Please subscribe to our channel. If you guys are on the Zoom call, hang on. We're going to go to breakout rooms, and then we're going to come back into a Q&A, and we'll talk about some of those huge $200 million deals. Sounds great. Everybody else, thanks a lot, and we'll see you soon.